I've known AJ Foyt for almost 50 years, much to his chagrin. We usually get along. Obviously, I grew up watching him race. I admire him. We had our differences a couple times, but there's just a style that he's got nobody else does. There's also a language and a vocabulary that he has that no one else has. However, the intense study that I've given this man's dialect through the years deserves an explanation. It's called the Foyt Dictionary, Foytisms, and I would like to give you a few right now in case you don't know what they are. All in all, when AJ is talking, waxing poetically, talking about well, all in all, this has been a good year, that's just the way he always introduces. That's when he's in a good mood. Well, all in all, I think you people are pretty good. That means he's happy. Of course, the favorite Foytism for me is, well, this is quite true. And this is quite true means he agrees that all his pit crew should be stoned and pillared and hung up because they left something loose on a pit stop. This is quite true when you agree with one of his points that catalytic converters are the worst thing Detroit ever came up with. Or this is quite true when he agrees with the point that you've made in an interview with him, which is rare. Now, this is quite true has kind of been replaced a couple times with this is for certain sure. This is for certain sure it's not really an adjective or an adverb. This is for certain sure this is when he really puts an exclamation point on something. Oh, this is for certain sure. And this is when you say, hey, it looks like the bulldozer is running pretty good this week. And he'll say, yeah, this is for certain sure. And I got me a new plot of land in Texas. I'm going to sell it for a big profit. Now, the great thing about AJ is even though he was Mr. All-American, when the split came along, he hired some foreigners, and he wasn't really fond of foreigners, especially Lola engineers, many years ago. But he's had some foreigners drive for him. He's also admired foreign drivers like Jimmy Clark. But when Juan Montoya won the Indy 500 in 2000, led almost every lap, I went to AJ after the race and said, what'd you think of Montoya? And his quote was, I think that Monterier is pretty good. So I've called Juan Montoya Monterier for the last 20 years, and he thinks that's pretty funny because Foyt liked him. One of his drivers this year, Connor Daly's one. It's pretty easy for him to understand and recognize and remember. The other one is Carlos Munoz. We all have a nose. It's Carlos Munoz, but Munoz that's pretty close. It's closer than some have been. AJ won an IRL race with Art and Dare, and it might have been at Texas or Kansas. I think it was Kansas. I can't remember. But he called him Aaron Dare. And the fact that he knew almost both of his names, to me, was off the chart because lots of times, poor little Zach Veach was standing down there during testing, and he was sending some headsets on, and I said to AJ, what do you think of your new driver? And he goes, he ain't driving for me. I said, yeah, that's your new driver. That's Zach Veach. He goes, he's 14. I said, no, he's actually older than that. Well, one of his greatest friends and one of his staunchest rivals for his whole career was Parnelli Jones, who he refers to as Vernelli. There's a V in there. And we think that it's somehow he got Vel Miletich and Parnelli confused at an early age, so he's Vernelli Jones. And our pal Dave Scoggin picked that up once on an interview, and we've run with it ever since. If you didn't drive a Roadster or Terre Haute or Winchester or Salem, pretty much, AJ doesn't think a lot of the new breed of drivers. He likes some of them. He thinks Scott Dixon, Kanaan are okay. They could have probably made it, but he's pretty critical. And if he thinks that you fall into that latter category, you're a mama's boy. AJ, how do you think some of these guys would have done with no cage, no fuel cells, little skinny tires? Well, there's a bunch of mama's boys. They couldn't have made it. They'd have been crying and run home to their mama. He said that on the PA once. Wonderful. In 1985, I was sitting next to Robin Hurd of March Engineering on the pit wall. AJ went out. Started out with a pretty good lap, ended up going 11 miles an hour slower on his fourth lap, and poor Jim Philippi, who was the PA announcer, didn't have a screen, so he couldn't tell what happened. He just saw the time, so he went up, and he basically said, AJ, you started out pretty quick, and then you dropped off pretty quick. What happened? And AJ said, well, if you'd have had your goddamned eyes open, you'd seen the car was pushing. And another thing, this car's a tub of shit. So for the rest of the month of May at the Indianapolis Star, I wrote 14 Copenhagen, Gilmore, TOS, Lola, Cosworth. And finally, race morning, Ann Finaro came up to me and said, AJ wants to know what the TOS means for. I said, what do you think? What did he say in front of 100,000 people in the PA system?